and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? God damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Virstyne.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
Please check us out at truthertalk.com. You can find our Conspiracy Realist t-shirt there. You can find Liam Sheff's book, Official Stories, available. You buy 3 t-shirts, we can give you a free copy of Liam's book, Official Stories. We're hoping to get more items onto our store, but right now that's all we got. And you can help us continue to keep this radio show going with all of our awesome guests that we have on all the time by also giving us a donation. And just, check us out. Just hang out with us. Like us on Facebook. Tell us what you think about what we're doing or what you want us to do. We're open. We don't even mind really critiques, do we?
Critiques, but not like being slammed. If you're going to insult, there's a difference,
Yeah, if you're rude and you're obnoxious and you're coming at us with like pure hate and stupidity,
we're coming to get you.
We're gonna rip
sending animal pictures and guns.
Yeah, and I got to tell you guys, I got a big sarcastic streak, so I can really numb people. I can really zap them with my sarcasm sometimes. It's not even funny, but it's so
in the West.
I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna call myself witty because I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's just I can be nasty and naughty sometimes with my comebacks on people that are really, really obnoxious and rude, but only if they're really obnoxious and rude. And a lot of times it's not the first time you do it or the second time. It's like when you come on our page and you're constantly being rude, then it's on like Donkey Kong and I'm taking you out.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes. But anyway.
So please like us after all the rest.
We're going to take you out. After all that, we're going to take you out. No, please like us because we want actually critiques. We do. I've had a few where people have come in and said, made comments about how ways to improve our website, and we did it. We took their word and we made improvements to our website. And then I had somebody write about one of our shows, and I said something about, the intro was so long I couldn't get to and I go, well, what about the intro was so long that, I wrote to this person back and I said, please tell me because we'd like to make improvements about that and maybe, make it tighter or do something to make it more palpable for you. So whatever people have that they want to share with us, I'm not, I don't get offended like that. It's only when it's just totally obnoxious and rude,
Yeah.
And people come in and they make comments about, pro-vaccine rhetoric, or they come on and try and tell us that we're killing babies and things like that because we're saying don't take vaccinations. Those kinds of things are offensive, and we're probably going to take those people out. But just because they're the ones that are spewing hate and rhetoric, so we got to get rid of them. We just can't allow that to be on our page and in our space. But speaking of all the wonderful guests we have on, I'm so excited that we're going to be talking to Jason Bermas.
Yeah, I am too.
I really admire his work, and I'm just looking forward to meeting him as a person. He seems funny, he seems likable, and I just think that this is going to be a good talk.
Yeah, he's very. One thing I like about him, he seems like he takes the kind of the good with the bad. Like he kind of looks at people's point of view, and he's like, okay, I like some of what this guy has to say. I may not agree with all of it, but I can take what works for me and use it to my advantage, as opposed to people that they think that if a person has a point of view that they agree with, that they have to believe or stand by everything that person says. Or if they like somebody and that person says one thing they don't agree with, and they're just like, oh, I hate that person. Depending on what, but I think there's that kind of general attitude that people, they stick by one person and then they see, that person does something that not necessarily that's even bad or wrong, but they just don't agree with, and then they just kind of shut that person out.
Right, he's not that dogmatic to the point that he's going to just totally just take out everybody. And, he can see, exactly what you're saying. Like, he can see that there's a good message and that there's a bad message, or, that sometimes these things are a double-edged sword. And, those of us in the truth movement, we don't always know what we're talking about. I mean, there are times when we won't necessarily lie to people. We are always seeking the truth, but that doesn't mean that we can't get things wrong or that we know everything or that, we won't put out speculation sometimes and not really be sure if that information backs up, but we'll always tell you that.
Yeah, well, the human, you have to admit, that's a strength. You have to admit that, if you make a mistake, you have to admit it. You have to own it and just move on. Because everybody does that. I don't know anybody that doesn't.
Yeah, like the other day I made a typo on one of our shows, and I felt really bad about it, and I was, I'm human, and we're doing this with our love, and we're not getting paid for it, and that morning I had a power outage, so I was, the morning I had a power outage, and I was late to get the show up, and so in my haste, I kind of didn't spell check, and so I made I made an error. I made an error, and I kind of...
Damn you, April Bowden.
I know, I made this error, and I felt really bad about it, because I was like, oh, how embarrassing. And, because it's not that big a deal, but it was in the title, so that's why it was a big deal. But anyway, so I felt really bad about that for a few hours, and then I realized I'm a human being, and this is a show that I do with my love, and I have a family, and I have kids, and all of that. And I think Jason, too, he works a full-time, 40-hour job, I think he's saying. So it's like...
Yeah, but he doesn't sleep, and he must not sleep.
He must not sleep, yeah. Some of these people don't sleep. And I think, but a lot of us do that. A lot of us in the truth movement, we work full-time jobs, I mean, aside from what we're doing on this. Because this is fun. This is love. It's not, for me, it's like recreational. I enjoy, I don't want to watch Kardashians. I want to watch, Shade, Jason Bermas' new film. I would pick that documentary any day of the week over whatever the Kardashians are doing, or whatever, Jersey Shore is doing, or whatever these, dumb shits are doing. I would take his movie, or any of his films, for that matter, or any of these other well-done films, or over that, because I don't know, I just like watching it. I'm sort of hungry for it. I don't know about you, but I like the knowledge, it just pours over me. I just want it so bad.
Yeah. It's empowering. And then, just the chance to be able to turn somebody on to something that can empower them, I think, helping to spread the information so people can empower themselves. Because, if it's out there, people will find their way. The people that want to find their way to this information that will empower them will find it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what I tell myself, though, when I get, it's true. But, sometimes I get discouraged because I want everybody to just be empowered and conscious and wake up and be on my level. But, maybe my level isn't it's not everybody's level. It's not what's right for them. It's not what they want. So I have to remind myself of that, because sometimes I get really frustrated, when I pass along some information about cancer that can empower somebody, but they don't want to take it. It's like devastating for me. Not as much anymore. I'm working on it, but I just be like so upset, and then I beat myself up. I'm like, I failed. I was too aggressive. I sent them 20 links when I should have sent them 2, Yeah,
it was like, it's true. Yeah, I remember those moments as well. And you have those, in the beginning, you have that feeling when you're first starting to wake up, you want everybody to know, and it's so urgent, and you're freaking out and everything. But in due time, everybody comes to it. And if you look at your own progression of awakening, for I think both of us have talked about this several times, and that it's like it comes in phases. You have moments that you remember throughout your life. I mean, I can remember things even from being a kid that I think led me to my awakening.
Yeah, definitely.
Moments in elementary school that I remember, being abused by a teacher, and I go, oh, this is what the education system is. And you get those, and it taught me at an early age, because I had such shitty teachers in elementary school, and that was part of the system, and they were abusing me. I had my third grade teacher, I brought this up one time, she used me as her aide. Literally, I was her aide because I was accelerated in all subjects. So she had me grading her papers and tutoring the other students, and I was also athletic at that time, so I was also captain of the kickball team. So I was doing everything. I was in the leader role for absolutely everything, and so when I went home at night, though, I had all my own schoolwork to do, because during the classroom day I was doing her work. So at home I had all my homework, and my mom was like, "Why do you have so much homework?" And I didn't have the understanding or the articulation to really explain what was going on. I didn't really know anything that it was wrong. I just kind of figured. But what happened to me at that moment was I learned very quickly it doesn't pay to be the smart kid. I said, this sucks. I don't want to be a smart kid. I'm tired. I have to do all this work. Yeah. Why is this an advantage? So that teacher taught me that very early on, and that was an awakening, part of my awakening process that I had when I was 8 years old. It's like, you go through that, and I was like, this fucking sucks. I forget it. And I don't think I was really a very good student after that. I think the next year, 4th grade, was the first D I ever got. And so, because I'd always gotten A's and B's and, and better, A pluses and so on and so forth. So I just always did really, really well in school because it was very easy, and I had already learned all that stuff before I even went to school. So I went there kind of ahead of the curve, but she just knocked me down, made me go back into like, oh, it sucks to be a smart kid.
Yeah.
That's not cool. You shouldn't be teaching people that knowledge and being smart and intellectual is bad. Yeah. That's terrible. Yeah. But that's part of the education system. You learn that very quickly. It's a disadvantage to be too smart, and it's a disadvantage to be too stupid. You want to just be right in the middle and everybody be in the drones and just kind of like do what you're told and carry on and don't make waves and just fly under the radar all day long, and that's the best way to be. And I'm not a fly under the radar kind of person.
And even in social conditioning, because it's like if you're the smart kid in school, or in the class, you get bullied by the other kids.
Right.
They're like, who do you think you are, smarty pants? You think you're smart, don't you?
Exactly. I mean, you get
and then you get your ass kicked. You get like juice thrown at you in the hall and.
Oh, I know. It's when I remember being my best friend was this little girl at the time in that class. My best friend, it was a combined 3rd and 2nd grade class. I was in the 3rd, she was in the 2nd grade, and I remember having to tutor her, and it was very awkward because she was my best friend, but I was like having to be kind of an authority figure to her, and I felt at the time like I didn't like doing that. I didn't, And when and the other thing too, God, that was really weird. She used to have us do this because like I said, I was kickball. I was really good, and so I was always.
You were good at kickball?
I rocked kickball.
Oh my God, I was so bad at kickball.
Oh, I was so athletic back in those days. I was an ice skater. I knew how to ski. I had just my legs, from the waist down. I was like rocking hard. But the point was that I was really good at kickball, and so I was either captain or I was first picked. And so as the captain or the first mate, you were in kind of the leader position, and so I would have to go to, if someone messed up a play, I would have to go to them and scold them and basically tell them what they did wrong. That's what the teacher made me do. And my friend Lisa was...
Like the same teacher that was like using you?
Oh, yeah.
Where's this bitch? Where is she? Where's she now? What's she doing?
She's probably dead. She was old back then. I mean, she had to be in her 50s or 60s at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
So you think she kicked the bucket by now?
I hope so. But anyway. That's bad. I shouldn't say
that. What a horrible teacher. Well, people kick the bucket. Shit. I know. That's part of life. But the thing was that she had me scold the other students, so I would have to scold my friends. And my best friend Lisa was very girly. She was one of those girls that wore a dress every day to school. I was a little bit more of a tomboy at that time. I became more girly later, but at that time I was very athletic and I liked sports. And and so I would always have to walk up to my best friend and like have to scold her and tell her, oh, you did this wrong and blah blah blah. And that was how she made us do it. Can you believe that shit? So she created the hierarchy. She was like, you guys, and it was me and this boy who I liked, Jeffrey, and
and I had a crush on him a little bit, and he had a crush on me too. And so, but we were the leaders of the kickball team because he was the best. We were the two best players, and so we had to basically be the, it was like creating this hierarchy, this false sense of authority, as we talked on the show before, but it was created by our teacher. She was the authority, and then she gave us the authority to, like, be above the other students. But for me, it was in every single area, because I was just excelling at that time in everything, including sports. But I didn't, after that, she made sure that I wanted to be the kid in the back of the school. I wanted to be in the back of the class, cutting, not going to, by the time I was in school after the cutter, I was like, whatever. I hated it. I didn't care about my grades.
Well,
she made sure that I felt that way, and so whatever. But maybe that was a blessing in disguise, because then it helped me not get so indoctrinated by this compulsory school system. But whatever. So it's interesting how you have these awakenings along the way. I had a very big one when I was 8 years old, and so you never know. Back to what we were talking about. So then again, you never know when something is going to get through to someone and empower them, because it is a process.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always hit them overnight.
Yeah, definitely.
Some people can. And speaking of loose change, I know a lot of people said that their awakening occurred after seeing loose change.
Yeah.
And we are going to be talking to Jason Bermas, who was one of the filmmakers from the second edition and the final cut, and he's great. I'm so excited.
That's right. You know what? I was awakening in different, I guess, sections about certain things, but Loose Change did, like, expand my mind a lot. I remember my best friend forcing me to see that movie.
Yeah.
She, like, forced me to see it. Like, I think I had to, like, flip a coin and I lost, or we did, like, rock, paper, scissors. Like, I remember, like, just not wanting to see that movie. Just because, I don't know, whatever the reason was, he was like, you have to see this. And I was like, fuck you, I want to play, watch movies and drink or, do something fun. And he's like, no, you have to. And I finally did, and I was like, wow, it was amazing. It was really eye-opening. It put everything in layman's term. Because I think by that time, I'd already, like, gotten the idea that the government was jumping on 9/11 as a means to start war, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I never really got the concept that the government actually funded the terrorists, and I never really thought about simple things like why don't planes don't melt. Like, in my fear, I was just like, I became so ignorant that I just missed certain little things like that. Like, planes don't melt. How do they not melt? They don't melt, but they're like, oh, the planes magically melted, and we found this passport, and, this happened to appear by the grace of God out of the rubbish, and,
totally.
Just little things like that. So,
for real.
I forgot.
It's true, and I felt like that too. Like, I didn't really even. It wasn't until I actually knew the official story that I came to question it, because they throw all this stuff at you in the beginning, and you're just like everybody else in shock and dismay. And we, as Richard Grove pointed out, we all have post-traumatic stress syndrome.
And they played it for like a week on.
Oh my God! Over and over.
Escape.
There was no escape, and to this day, if I see that, like when it was the anniversary of 9/11 that we had not too long ago, and they were playing that shit on TV, and to this day, I cry, I get really emotional and really sick about it, because it happened, and a lot of people died, and that's really it was very upsetting to me. Even though now I know the official story to be complete and utter bullshit, it still doesn't lessen the fact that it hurts to have watching all these people go down, and how, and in a way it's like even worse, because it's we know that it was, well, I mean, we were so manipulated, so in a way it's worse to know now, because before you could think, well, we couldn't control it. It was, if you believed the official story, you would think, well, there was no control, we didn't have the securities in place, whatever, this and that, and so it just, something that just happened, like we were talking earlier, like cancer, those things just happen. You're empowered by knowing that these things don't just happen, because somebody is actually making these things happen or causing these things to happen by their whatever, their plan, or their incompetence, or their lack of caring, or their seeking, financial gain or power or whatever. And so I'm empowered by the knowledge to know that 9/11 was an inside job, but but at the same time, it doesn't lessen the pain of having lost all that life on that day, and it doesn't make me any less sad about it, and or hurt any less. So it's still very traumatic. But yeah, I mean, they used our emotions and they used that feeling to get us to just not even question what was going on. And we see that time and time again, be it Sandy Hook or the Boston bombing. They do the same old shit. And so, but Loose Change is a great film. It's a great one for people to start on and to really understand, you know, the data and the details. They really go over just what happened, you know, what took place, and the things that were claimed to have taken place, which really couldn't have possibly. So it's a great movie, and certainly one that I think most people consider to be one of their biggest awakenings to the 9/11 issue for sure. So I think we're going to take a short break right now because I'm real excited to bring in Jason Bermas.
Let's break it.
Let's break it. So please stay with us. When we get back, Jason Bermas. All right.
I was on holiday with Sir Laurence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK. He had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. It was clear. We had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthertees.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthertees.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthertees.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 500 stations around the country on Pacifica and NPR and PBS and public access TV stations on both TV satellite networks, Dish Network Channel 9415, Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on DirecTV Channel 375, and we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. As we take on the issue of what happened on September 11, 2001, our guests are Dylan Avery, writer and director of Loose Change, Jason Bermas, researcher for the film. James Meggs is also with us, editor-in-chief of Popular Mechanics, and David Dunbar, executive editor of Popular Mechanics, who led the editorial team that produced the book Debunking 9/11 Myths. Jim Meggs, you're the editor-in-chief of Popular Mechanics. Your response to this excerpt of Loose Change about what happened in Shanksville?
You know, that clip is really interesting because it shows how slickly made this film is, how compelling it is at asking a series of sort of hanging questions and putting some spooky music behind it and making it sound as if someone's covering up these facts, but a brave researcher can dig down and put all the pieces together. In fact, there's answers to all those questions. If you look at the sources that were used throughout that clip, they're all things that came up in the first day or two after the attacks. In some cases, somebody's standing across a field and saying, I don't see a plane. Well, when a plane strikes the ground at over 500 miles an hour, flying almost straight down, there typically isn't much visible above ground. They also quote the coroner in the Shanksville area. We talked to the coroner. He had the horrific job of collecting the body parts and cataloging and performing all the necessary tests. Those bodies were identified. The plane wreckage in the pieces, the tiny pieces that it was in after it hit the ground, was collected from the hull, cataloged. And the black box was recovered, and we know what went on because of the records of the voice cockpit recorder, and in this case, quite a few phone calls from the aircraft itself to various people on the ground. So we know a lot of what happened in Flight 93. The film is alleging that no plane crashed there at all. The people were sent off somewhere to somehow be disposed of. If you're going to allege something so far beyond what a huge body of evidence would suggest is the truth, then you do need to pull together some evidence. And so we fully support asking questions and being skeptical. But if you ask questions, you also have to look for the answers. And when you get answers, you can't ignore them.
James Bermas of Loose Change.
I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to take on the government's lies and Popular Mechanics, which is a Hearst Yellow Journalism Publications lies as well. And I would just say, look for yourself. This is an open field, and for the first time in history, we have a crater and no plane debris. Look at any other plane crash and you'll find a tail section, a wing section. There were reports that this actually was strewn out over 8 miles, and we have videotape of smaller pieces of debris. The coroner speaks for himself. We have the Pittsburgh Gazette, the editor-in-chief there saying, again, there's nothing there that looks like a plane. Again, don't believe us. Go to seeloosechange.com right now and watch it for free. But take a look. All those people, you would normally have NTSB people in blue jackets to get the plane parts and put them back together. That's what happened with TWA 800 that was in the ocean. And you don't have that. You have people in hazmat uniforms. Why? So all we're saying is, look, there's no plane in this open field at all. There's a 10-foot crater by 16 foot, and there's just smoke there. So where is this plane? That's all we're saying.
What about what the coroner said, collecting body parts?
Well, he's never addressed us, and if you look at all of his media accounts in the days after when he was first asked, again, he said there were no body parts, and to this day, he has not seen a single drop of blood. So again, I would say that's more reliable than, 4 years after the fact being contacted.
Did you talk to him?
He won't address us. Basically, we have had people contact him, and he hangs up on us.
I find, typically when we investigate these things, it's very easy to find public records, to find the reports from all the various agencies that have investigated these accidents. The transcripts of the voice cockpit recorder have been released. In many cases, again, the sources, Jason, those are all newspaper articles that are written the day of, day after, a couple of days after.
No, one of them was a year after the fact.
Perhaps you know what it was like on those days, and you know how chaotic it was. You know how much misinformation typically comes out in the early hours of a major news event. Over time, with further research and good reporting, you can sift through those things and you can make progress and get into the truth. Typically, what we see on conspiracy websites is citations that go back to the earliest moments when the least information was available, and virtually no reference to the voluminous research which is done to follow up.
Dylan, what about the issue of cell phones?
The issue of cell phones is that for a majority of Flight 93's flight, it was flying over cruising altitude, and a number of these, now, a majority of the phone calls were coming from air phones, but the cell phone calls were coming from cruising altitude. Now, it is pretty much impossible in 2001 to sustain an extended conversation over a cell phone at cruising altitude from a commercial airliner. But I mean, that's not our strongest evidence. I mean, that's just one of the many things about that day that don't add up to us. And we haven't gotten to hear the cockpit voice recorder. We haven't gotten to hear any of these alleged phone calls. I mean, the government is cherry-picking the evidence that it releases to the government, and I feel that if our government was truly attacked by surprise and we had absolutely no inclination in the attacks, they would not be so reticent to release the 84 videos from the Pentagon, the cockpit voice recorder of Flight 93. The list of things that the government is holding from us goes on.
David Dunbar.
With regard to the cell phones, we did what any reporter would do. We talked to experts in the field, and in fact cell phones do work at that altitude, up to 35,000 feet and higher. And
in 2001?
In 2001, and it might be instructive for you to talk to some of the cell phone experts. There are a lot of drop calls because the plane is moving at high speed and the handoffs sometimes get dropped. That's true, and we know from the public record that in fact a lot of the cell phone calls were cut off, and most of the phone calls were made from the airphones. But nevertheless, talk to the experts and you'll find out that you can make a cell phone call from a commercial plane.
If I may address that for one moment, if that's true, then why in 2004 did American Airlines spend tens of thousands of dollars to put cell phone towers in their planes so people could make those calls? Why spend tens of thousands of dollars 3 years after the fact if they worked so well on September 11th? What he's saying is a total lie.
James Meggs.
We didn't say they worked well, we said they worked. And if you look at the record, many of the calls were dropped, they were incomplete. But especially over rural areas, if you think about it, a cell phone tower can cover a couple hundred square miles. That coverage area goes up into the sky as well as horizontally across the ground. The reason that they've improved the system was to avoid the drop calls and to isolate the cell phone transmissions from any possible interference with the avionics.
We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. And the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. The effects on the weather, Perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, and so you get ecosystem collapses. Now, the exact amount of how you map from a certain increase in of CO2 to what temperature will be and where the positive feedbacks are, there's some uncertainty there, but not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad. I asked the top scientists on this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3. The second factor is the services we use.
Jason Bermas has worked on several controversial independently released films such as Loose Change, Second Edition, and Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and now Shade the Motion Picture, which exposes the true power structure embedded in our global reality, showing the true controllers and their plans to geoengineer our planet and control the populace. We'd like to welcome independent activist, researcher, and filmmaker Jason Bermas to the show. Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm very well, and thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on the show, Jason.
Yeah.
We've been following your work for a long time.
Yeah.
We're fans. We like what you do. And your primary, we were talking right before we started the show, you're primarily a filmmaker, and your latest film, Shade, is out now. People can watch it and buy the DVD. So what can you tell us about it without maybe giving away too much, because we want people to watch it, but what can you tell us about your new film?
Sure, well, I don't mind giving away too much. I feel like the information inside is, first of all, I give it away for free, so I encourage people to get the link on YouTube, share it with others. If you do purchase a DVD or if you go to Vimeo and you get the high-definition download, I want you to make copies. I want you to hold screenings. I want you to get this movie out there, just like we did with Loose Change, because this film deals with a few subjects that maybe I haven't touched upon in my other films or only touched upon briefly. Really, the only thing that's maybe redundant in it is the Bilderberg Group, but this is a movie for people that may not have seen Invisible Empire or maybe Alex Jones's Endgame, really have no idea about this elite power structure that's kind of embedded in both parties and our global structure in general. So I start this one kind of introducing people to the Bilderberg Group. And on top of that, this is my first film I've ever done without a narration. It's clip to clip, person to person, jump to jump. There is no background voice. Everybody carries the movie. I really like that style presented in Inside Job in 2010. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but it was on the banking industry. He had a really good, quick jump cut style that I hadn't really seen in many documentaries that kept really a professional feel about him. And that's one of the big things when I make these movies. I want the production value to be as high quality as humanly possible. I want this to look like something that you would watch on the History Channel or the Learning Channel, and even sometimes blow it out of the water. So that was a big goal with this movie. I shot it all on DSLR, which gives it kind of a 35 millimeter feel, a film-like feel. Goes beyond HDV and HDR, which most of us have been shooting on for the past 5 or 6 years. And I also incorporated, we've all bitched about the elite basically controlling wars, controlling the economy, and controlling the military-industrial complex. But what else are these guys into? What other things do they seek to control? And, through my research, years and years of it, I know these people are geoengineering the planet. It's in their own white papers. It's in their own IPCC documents. It's in their own naval records. It's in their own private documents through the Royal Society on geoengineering. It's through their solar radiation management documents. All these are presented in the film. And I almost feel like everybody's heard this word chemtrail, and it either gets this kind of negative connotation of a conspiracy theory, or someone just runs with it all the time, and they think, well, if I see this and it's not a chemtrail that's evaporated, I know what it is. It's a chemtrail, and it's barium, aluminum, and strontium. And that's if you've done the research. Now, it goes beyond that, and that's something that we address in this film. Rosalind Peterson, I think, does a great job of kind of separating geoengineering from the term chemtrail and what it really means. Michael Murphy does a great job in that section. And then when you get into environmentalism in general, because all these white papers say that basically they're geoengineering the planet to save us from global warming, which we really don't even have a scientific consensus on. Man-made global warming, by the way, not climate change, which is what they changed it into after, a decade plus of selling it to my generation as global warming, as something that was happening because the ozone layer was depleting due to chlorofluorocarbons. It suddenly switched out, and the ozone layer was no longer really a problem. Now it was all about carbon dioxide, and people should kind of take a step back and realize you emit carbon dioxide on a daily basis no matter what you do. It's what you exhale. It is a life force on the planet. It's what plants breathe, okay? So that is very, very alarming, and then when they start talking about a tax based on CO2, that's a tax based on life, all life. So you really have to think about what that means for society, and I show some clips of Bill Gates and others discussing this. But on the much darker angle, the same people that are into this are also into population control. And and that's where a lot of people have accused me in the past of being a fearmonger, or I'm trying to scare people. And really, if you look at my productions, there is just about the least amount of fear possible in some very scary subjects. And unfortunately, these are subjects that we have to deal with as adults. We can't sit here like we're children or babies, sucking our thumb in the fetal position and acting like, oh, they love us and they want to take care of us. If we don't get out there and we don't raise awareness about these issues, then we're doomed to be a part of their solutions rather than our solutions. And that's something we really focus on. I think we've had some great successes in bringing the awareness about GMO foods, Monsanto, and genetic modification in general, because it really goes beyond just foods. I mean, we have pigs that have been injected with jellyfish. Now they've done the same thing with rabbits. The jellyfish DNA allows them to glow in the dark. We're talking about thousands of different chimeras that actually included human DNA that 4 separate universities had been working on for years. And had I said that in 2010, which I had said that this was obviously being worked on, I was laughed at. I was called a conspiracy theorist. But then by, I believe it was 2011, 2012, it became common knowledge. So you really do have, this little globalist clique that is into not only controlling the world through wars and economics, but they're attempting to control the weather and the population in general. So that's what I set out to show people in shade, and then on top of that, we have a solution section at the end, so hopefully people won't feel helpless. Hopefully it'll really motivate people to get involved in what matters, do something on their end, whether it's locally, it's within their county, their state, if it's basically a global level, whatever you can do. We want you to harness your own talents. You don't have to be a radio show host. You don't have to be a filmmaker. I mean, you can join your local PTA and make sure the kids there get better food, and that's part of the solution. There are so many things that you have to reach in from yourself before you can start pointing fingers at others.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, you can just start in your community, like you said, or start a campaign to get the fluoride out of your water or whatever. There's all kinds of ways to get involved. And I wanted to ask you about Bill Gates, because you brought him up as one of the people who's promoting this geoengineering thing. He's also promoting the GMO thing, vaccination thing, and he's been a past Bilderberg attendee. And for me personally, like one of my own kind of awakenings was through his own arrogance when he gave that TED Talk, and he was talking about depopulation agenda, because I have a vaccine-damaged son, so I was interested in hearing what he had to say about that. And when he was talking about vaccines and he was using the global warming argument, like CO2, we have to reduce the planet, it all kind of just came together in my mind, like, oh, I get it now, this is what's going on and everything. So it was his own arrogance that I kind of went, oh, now I kind of get what your agenda is. So, but you gave, when you were doing you had the night show on InfoWars, and you gave a really good analysis of that. So if you could share that with our audience a little bit about Bill Gates, what he said at that TED Talk, and what your analysis of it was.
Sure, and this is included in the film. So, if you want to take it visually and you want to hear his own words, I encourage people to check out Shay, because we included those excerpts from that TED Talk. But first of all, he starts off talking about, first of all, it's called Innovating to Zero, is his TED Talk. And he talks about how they have to get one of these numbers in this, false equation that essentially says CO2 is equal to people and their activities and the energy that produces. And one of those numbers have to get to zero. And it's a multiplication application. Now, if you think about that, 1 times 100 is 100, but 1 times 0 is 0 no matter what. So when you get one of these numbers, which is either people, the activities people do, the energy it expounds, it all comes down to the human population. If you were to get one of those numbers to 0, essentially you don't have a human populace. And not only do you not have a human populace, you don't have any life on the planet that's a mammal species, because they also emit CO2. So, in this film, I point that out and say, hey, that's an utter impossibility. Yet, the people in Gates' audience, when he first says it, there's kind of like this uncomfortable chuckle, because on a conscious level, you realize that you can't get one of these numbers down to 0 with a human populace on the planet. But on the other hand, this is Bill Gates. He brought us Windows, and he's got the Xbox, and we love him so much. So he continues
I hate him.
Go on.
So he also, what people don't understand is that back in around 2000, a little bit before that, there was a Federal Trade Commission argument that he was a monopoly with Microsoft. They were going to break that monopoly up. And a lot of people don't understand how these tech companies are kind of embedded in with each other. In the 90s, Bill Gates and Microsoft actually bailed out Apple so they didn't go under, so they had the appearance of some sort of a competition. And, to Gates' credit, I will say that his argument that any company could come along at any time and challenge his status as, the only operating system or, a power player in the PC market did come to kind of fruition with Google. But if you look into the history of Google and you've seen ex-CIA agent Robert Steele's work on this, then you'll know that it was one of these seed companies for American intelligence, for the CIA. And really that's why they were able to get that far, if you will, get into that competition status. But long before that, Gates gave up his role in Microsoft. He kind of broke the company into sub-companies at the request of these guys so that they wouldn't pursue him and prosecute him any longer. And he also joined their club. Up until that point, he was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He really hadn't done anything other than Microsoft. Well, once he joins this organization, he gives the reins over to some other people. He decides that he's going to start up this foundation with his wife, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also acts as kind of like this tax haven and shell. And that allows him to make so much more profit on all these other things he's invested in other than Microsoft. And, of course, he'll tell you himself, and it's in the film, that his true passion is vaccine and seeds. So it shouldn't be the biggest revelation that the man has over 500,000 shares of Monsanto through his foundation, that he's invested in Walmart, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Diamond Foods, all these different things that will benefit from his genetic modified food, because he'll be able to put it in all these different products. On top of that, he's invested in the entertainment industry. He's invested in banking. He's invested in the energy industry on multiple levels. And he has a huge amount of influence. And he will tell you in this talk, if we do a really good job, the population's headed to about 9 or 10 billion people. We're almost at 7 billion at this point when he gives the talk. And he says, if we do a really good job with health care, reproductive care, and vaccines, we can lower that by 10 or 15%. Well, excuse me, but if we're working hard on health care and we're vaccinating people against disease, shouldn't the population go up? Shouldn't we have a longer lifespan? Shouldn't those things enable us to flourish rather than reduce the population? And once again, this is something that's kind of just passed aside in his talk, and we discuss it at length in the film. But obviously you can see the hypocrisy. And the ultimate hypocrisy is this man, along with others like Warren Buffett, David Rockefeller, George Soros, Michael Bloomberg, Oprah Winfrey, are having these meetings. Everybody knows about that one famous meeting kind of within the Patriot movement in 2009 where these guys met and started talking about population control, and it was spun by USA.
They cut the superheroes. They made them out superheroes. Yeah.
It's in the film. I had to read that as well because it's so absurd. But there have been several meetings since with just some of these players, Gates amongst them. Gates met with Oprah yet again, and I believe it was Warren Buffett and actually Jeb Bush on population control in Florida, I think only 3 or 4 months ago. So these people are actively participating in the growth, or if you will, the control of the populations or the population around the planet. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm never going to be a billionaire. You're never going to be a billionaire. But when we're talking about possibly my life or my family's life, I'd like to be able to sit at the table and make a decision as to what happens to us. But we don't get to sit at that table, and I think that's what I try to get across is you're not going to be a billionaire. And these guys are very open about what they want to do to the populace, and that's why I want to thank Luke Rudowski of We Are Change, a really good friend of mine. He's in the film, and he allowed me also to use a couple of We Are Change clips of Ted Turner, another one of these individuals that went to this meeting but has been outspoken for decades on population control. And the first clip is one in which he is in New York City and being kind of asked facetiously by another member of We Are Change if he thinks that the population needs to be reduced by 90%. He goes, not 90%. He's like, I think a population of about 2 billion is right. Well, 2 billion, huh? Because there's 7 billion on the planet. Where do the other 5 billion people go?
Yeah, somebody's going to have to die. Exactly.
A lot of people are going to have to die.
And they could sit there and say it's through family planning and a one-child policy like China, which I think is inhumane in the first place. But the reality is that that's not going to work. That's not going to get us to 2 billion people in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. It's fantasy land. So the next clip that we were allowed to use kind of within these clips, Luke's kind of narrating them and talking about, what happens in them. He gets approached and asked if he said in 1996, now this was something I was going to put in Invisible Empire, A New World Order to find, but I just could not find the proper source material. It almost became one of those patriot mythos where it's been published so many times, but no one has the source material. So I shied away from using it. But this young man confronted Ted Turner with his quote that in 1996, he said that he wanted the world population reduced by 95%. Now, any sane person would have responded by saying, of course I never said that. That sounds ridiculous. That's utter. Why would I do that? He says, 95%, I don't know, I might have said it. 96 was a long time ago, and never denies it.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking to the young man, and the young man goes, well, isn't it a contradiction that you are the U.S.'s largest landowner, and you want this type of population control? And he says, no, by acres, not by, there's a lot of desert in there. So he's trying to say that, go ahead.
This is where he's talking about the bison. He bought it from bison. It's like, you fucking kidding me? I want to bring back the bison.
Yeah, I didn't say the bison. And he's like, oh, what's more important, the survival of the human race or the bison, sir? And he walks away. And that's when we bring in Webster Tarpley. Now, I know a lot of people wouldn't think that Webster Tarpley would be in a documentary about population control because it's not something he discusses a lot, but he was great in this movie. He not only talked about the Bilderberg Group, the modern power structure, people like Peter Thiel, who are the heads of, or the the founders of PayPal, the CEO of Facebook, and one of these guys that's throwing a lot of money into the libertarian movement. I don't want to give away too much, but he breaks that down well. But at that bison section, he says, this is classic from oligarchs. They always try to dehumanize people to the point that they're animals. And that he says, that's what Greek sculpture arises from, the humans that are goats, the centaurs. This is to dehumanize the general populace and say, look, we're oligarchs, we're of a certain antiquity, we matter, we're important. The rest of the population are just dumb beasts. And I also show a quote from Henry Kissinger where he talks about soldiers just being big dumb animals at the behest of U.S. foreign policy. In other words, he gets to decide who lives and dies. They don't matter. They're just grunts. They're just soldiers. They're there to be manipulated.
So you were talking about billionaires, how they're part of this billionaire club. Do you think it's a little bit tighter group even than that? Because somebody like J.K. Rowling that wrote Harry Potter, she's a billionaire, right? So she probably wouldn't be a part of that club. So how tight is that circle?
At this point, that's a great question. Well, like Bill Gates, he wasn't a billionaire until all of a sudden he did have a certain amount of power with Microsoft, and then all of a sudden the court system goes after him. It wasn't until he kind of seceded into this club, kind of joined and said, all right, well, what do I have to do, that he became part of it. Now, when I say billionaire club, some of these people, the royalty, who knows how much money they really have. They've done a great job of hiding their wealth and their assets. People like Prince Philip get a quote in this film. And obviously, I don't think that every billionaire is, quote-unquote, inherently evil. But when you're dealing with, if you look at somebody like J.K. Rowling, for instance, they've made their money on writing books. They haven't made their money through the stock exchange, through investments in business, through cutting out the workforce, through redistributing wealth, through third world takeovers in South America of their water systems like Bechtel and others. That's not what she's about. Now, that doesn't mean that somewhere down the line she won't decide to get involved in the stock market, in big business, and they'll either try to recruit her or crush her. That's what I've seen. Either you get to sit at the table, and, look at Ted Turner, for example. He's a great example. Back in the 90s, Ted Turner probably had more influence than the majority of these billionaires. You weren't even hearing about Soros or even Rockefeller as much. You heard Rockefeller probably more in the 80s when he was backing the Reagan-Bush team and the Republican end on that side. But someone like Turner, you couldn't get away from him. He started up CNN, the first 24-hour news network. He owned the Atlanta Braves. His wealth was just almost immeasurable at that point. Well, Ted Turner got tricked into a pretty bad merger with AOL, which none of us use anymore. He thought he was jumping on the future of technology. In fact, by the time he got involved, it was already antiquated technology and doomed for failure. So a large section of his wealth was really gutted, and he's not as influential. So they'll, a lot of people talk about it like this, and it really is like this. These guys will sit like gangsters at a card game and, try to manage the world. But as soon as they're, kind of bicker with one another, fight with one another, there's a lot of infighting in there. There's a lot of smaller agents for, the Goldman Sachs family, the Royal family, the Rockefeller family. There's all these small little factions. But as soon as somebody threatens the card game, that's when they work together. That's when they sit there at a meeting like the Bilderberg Group, or maybe a sub-meeting at the Bohemian Grove, which takes place for 2 weeks instead of 2 days. It has a wider range of people. So I look at it that way. And by the way, when I say inherently evil, I just want to point out that in order to get that kind of wealth, you really have to be amoral in so many senses, because you are disrupting human life. And, people like Warren Buffett love that the public portray them as this ice cream cone-eating basketball fan who's just an old man. He's a really good guy. He's not. He's like literally, people should watch Boardwalk Empire. I love that show. It's half fiction and half fact, and they've kind of manipulated these historical characters like Al Capone, and it wasn't Enoch Thompson. I forget it was Enoch Johnson. They turned him into a Thompson. They throw in some fictional characters, but, they introduced J. Edgar Hoover this season, and it shows the corruption of state officials that are acting like gangsters back in the 20s. And it shows the corruption within the FBI even then. So people need to understand that this corruption hasn't subsided. It's only grown. It's become the norm.
So I have a question. So going back to that, kind of the expanding on the Bill Gates TED conference talk, you know, because he gave it talking about how he wants to depopulate people, and then you have Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was quoted in a speech saying that it's easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people, and then you have somebody like David Rockefeller in his book, a memoir, even talks about that him and his family are part of a secret cabal. I'm just curious, if the elite has such horrible master plans, why do they announce their agenda and views so freely in public?
Well, it's not so much freely in public. I mean, again, you'd have to actually buy David Rockefeller's book when it was published. It wasn't like the e-books were that prominent. It wasn't like the internet had blown up. They're arrogant. And, you know, I want to talk about that quote because a lot of people who have seen the film, I've seen some negative comments where they go, well, it says there, you know, they don't get through the whole quote that people have accused him of such a thing, but that doesn't mean anything. But then he admits it.
But he goes, I stand guilty. He goes, if that's the charge, I stand guilty.
And I am proud of it.
Yeah, but like, yeah. Because I remember I first started reading the quote, and then I got to the end, and I was like, oh, but he doesn't deny it, and he admits it.
Yeah, and that whole chapter is really about that, too. It's not just that quote. You know, he actually talks about how he would like to globalize the planet and how he does work with others. And, you know, it's a significant chapter. I want to say it's like 9 or 10 pages where he really goes over it. Obviously, that is the most alarming quote, as he says, you know, some have accused me and my family of being part of a secret cabal that has tried to globalize the world, make one world, if you will, outside of the best interests of the United States. And he says, if that is the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it. That is alarming. This is a man who him and his family are not only intricately involved in industry, but also politics. You know, Nelson Rockefeller was part of a few administrations, ran for president. We have, I believe, senators from New York or governors from New York that are within the Rockefeller family. So, you know, we have Jay Rockefeller even today on the Senate floor. So obviously, this is a very, very influential family, and when he is so outward and open with that, people should be alarmed. But in general, people just don't care. They are so wrapped up in, you know, the World Series is on, and I can't get enough of Paulie D. He had a baby outside of wedlock. I love Jersey Shore. You know, they're just obsessed with the most nonsensical things, and that's what's pushed in the media. And I'm not saying there isn't a time for entertainment because, you know, tonight, I'm not even sure if the World Series is on tonight, but if it's not, I'm hoping that The Simpsons is on. I want to watch it. I was saddened by the news that Marsha Wallace, the person that does the voice for Mrs. Krabappel, died yesterday. I keep up on a lot of that stuff, too, and I save, a part of my day, if you will, or a part of my week for a little bit of mindless entertainment. I'm a huge UFC fan. I missed fight night last night. I've been watching the fights today. I'm going to finish those after this radio program. So there is time for entertainment. I think we all need that. You know, I still want to take a girl out on a date and, you know, go watch a movie and just forget about, you know, politics. And
you want to see, like, shit blow up and, like, eye candy?
You know it. I mean, I went to see Gravity, and I watched Superman last night, and I really enjoyed it. You know, Superman, one of my heroes.
For the first time, I love Superman.
Oh, it was good. It was really good.
Good. I liked it, too.
And I actually have like a little quote in my new film, Shade the Motion Picture, with a Superman graphic that I did that I really like. I took the S symbol off his chest, but it's pretty obvious who he is. And, you know, there is time for that, but there's also time to get involved with your local community. There's also time to get involved in the big issue. There's also time to send out links to somebody to take part in trying to get GMO labeling on foods in California. Even though those guys lost, they're still going. And I am so proud of that state in that respect because I want to see that happen. I mean, if you think, you know, there's a lot of emerging evidence right now that marijuana in its concentrated form, if given orally, is curing cancer. And I was extremely skeptical about this when I was getting calls on my InfoWarrior show back in 2009 and 2010. You know, I was for the decriminalization of it. And I had talked about how, you know, obviously there were some medical benefits to get people to eat, but now that I've seen the studies, now that I've seen the tests, now that I've seen the people that have said that they have survived cancer, now that I've seen this woman who literally picked up her son who they were forcing, her young son on chemo, moved to Colorado and started giving him this treatment. He's in complete remission. He's running around like a normal child. He's not vomiting 50 times a day. And he looks like he's not only going to make it, he's going to flourish. How do you not talk about that? You know, if we could end cancer, talk about ending their agenda for population control. You know, about 75% of us, if we're going to die from quote-unquote natural causes later in life, it's from cancer. And, you know, my buddy, he just lost his, I think she was just like 42, 43-year-old sister to cancer. And I really don't believe that. You know, my dog, just a few months ago, my dog had not even turned 6 yet, started going lame in his legs, and we thought that it was like a slip disc or something, went and gave him an MRI. And, you know, he's just filled with cancerous lesions on his back.
Oh, no.
So to me, it is a really big issue. You are seeing people get more types of diverse cancer. And, you know, I thought about that as possibly my next documentary. I see some people out there that are doing it. My buddy, Dan Dix, who's in the movie Press for Truth, he's done some great documentaries out there as well, Into the Fire being one of them. And he recently met up with Rick Simpson, who's behind this hemp oil revolution, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that. That's a big issue. And then the other, I think, big issue that needs to be tackled, and it might, who knows what I'm going to do next. You know, I never guarantee it because it's so hard to get these movies done. People don't understand how long it takes to do them, how much dedication and work it really does take to make a production like this. But the idea that in 2013 we have royalty in the first place, that somehow bloodlines entitle people to more, to rule. And whether you're talking about the royal family that obviously has a great deal of power in the westernized world out in the UK, or you're talking about even small tribes in Africa, or you're talking about Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, it has to go. If we want to be a civilized society, we need to set everybody equal on the in the beginning on that plane, and that doesn't mean we have to redistribute wealth, or if you've earned something, you can't give it to your kid. But this is unearned. They haven't earned anything. Yeah. They literally are born, and the media. I mean, look at this kid, Prince William and Kate Middleton's kid. I mean, this kid is all over the news for the last 3-4 months. He hasn't done anything. He's unimportant, and there should be no point where William rules anything, let alone his son. We should stop it right now with the Queen.
Please do
Charles.
that, Please do it. Please. Oh, my God, when the royal wedding happened, it was, oh, my God, it was so fucking annoying. It was just,
it really was.
It was, do it, please.
I mean, I'm thinking about calling it Crush the Crown, and just showing the atrocities that royalty have caused over the centuries, and then getting into the modern-day family, which is, you know, as gangster as it fucking gets. You know, there's more revelations about Princess Diana's death. Dodi Fayed's father, for over a decade now, has been saying that Prince Philip hired a hit squad, killed his daughter, and what did the mainstream media run with for years and years and years? It's the paparazzi's fault. It's people with cameras. People with cameras are bad. And that theme, that theme really does carry over today. I mean, it was subtle then, but now it's almost like you're not allowed to tape the police officers. You know, I saw that heart-wrenching video where this guy is on the corner of a street. There's about 5 cop cars. It looks like it's out. Oh, my God. The guy did absolutely nothing wrong. He put his hands behind his back as they approached him. Let me tell you right now, if that were me, my hands were not going behind my back. I'm not being arrested. If you want to arrest me for taping you, and that's essentially what they did. See, that's the big mistake that guy made, because if his hands were actually free and he was just talking to those officers, by the time his dog got out, he would have been able to grab that dog, and they probably would have had to at least shoot him too. But for them to execute a dog that did not jump at them, that was just worried about his owner, that he had put into the car, what they should have done is immediately uncuff that man, let him tend to his dog, and then if they wanted to illegally pursue an illegal arrest, so be it. You know, hopefully there'll be repercussions for that later because somebody else has a camera and they're taping it. But the bottom line is the idea that cameras are bad in the hands of the public, and cameras are bad when they're taping celebrities. It's ludicrous. Look, if you're out in public, it's okay for these guys, in so many cases, to tape you. And now the revelations from the NSA of them track tracing and databasing every single thing you do on the Internet, which is something I've talked about for years, and even included in Invisible Empire, which was released in 2010. I talked about the AT&T Mark Hepting case that was thrown out by the National Security Agency twice, and no revelations came out of that other than the fact that there were secret rooms that acted as servers that they split off all the information to at major telecommunication companies like AT&T, and now that's all been proven fact and beyond. And Snowden is not even done releasing all the information that he harnessed from the NSA. So people need to be aware of that as well.
You know, I wanted to kind of backtrack a bit, just and ask, because we got on this tangent about the royals and stuff, and how they're, you know, basically just stomping over humanity, and going back to the globalists who's doing this with the geoengineering. I'm just wondering, you know, have you ever come across any information on how they're able to protect themselves from all the damage that they're causing, or are they being affected as well? Because they're, you know, they're affecting our air, our water, our environment. You know, do they have like a plan for them, a place to go, or is it just
that's a great
all
question.
go down?
Well, you know, I actually have Michael Murphy address that question in the film, and he likens it. You know, how do we relate to that? And he likens it to somebody in your family that had drug addiction. And no matter what, no matter how much this is killing them too, they cannot stop. They need that drug. And power is a drug. And these people never seem to have enough power. So, yeah, are they breathing the same air as we are? You bet they are. Are they eating the same foods as we are? In many cases, yes, they are. Now, that doesn't mean that some of these people don't have organic farms and won't eat, you know, the Walmart beef. In fact, I would say the majority of them are eating, you know, top-of-the-line food and not GMOs. However, you know, how are they going to get away from the air that we breathe? They can't do it. And, you know, when people are seeking power, they often overlook the damage that they might cause to those around them, and even themselves. They're blind to it. And I really believe that is the case. Unfortunately, you know, when you say to somebody, well, if we start geoengineering the planet and we start using only Monsanto seeds, this is your profit margin and it's going to triple, they're not even giving a second thought to the fact that it might kill the soil, cause more cancers, make it harder to breathe, have asthma outbreaks and epidemics, bring back rickets. They don't care. And, you know, they look at it more like, well, that's just for the masses. That's not really for me. I'm safe in my little corner of the world. And you have to think that if something went down, you know, the majority of these people probably have some sort of a bunker, some sort of an escape plan. Hell, even Sweden has bunkers for every one of their citizens in the case of a nuclear disaster or something similar. So I would be shocked if, you know, a Turner or a Rothschild or a Soros didn't have some sort of an escape plan, whether it be to some tropical island or some kind of a bunker. But you would hope that common sense would prevail and that these measures would never be taken because these people would never dare try to do something so gruesome to the populace. But then I look at something like Dr. Strangelove, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, probably my favorite Kubrick flick too, and I'm a big Kubrick fan. And it kind of shows the absurdity and the insanity of this system where they're actually discussing, you know, all-out nuclear war and the destruction of the planet and how long it would take to repopulate the planet from those that were able to be taken into the bunkers. So, you know, we know that those types of plans exist. We know that Rex 84 exists. We know that FEMA's organization exists and that they've taken superdomes and other large structures and converted them into these quote-unquote FEMA camps that so many people like to talk about. So these are the realities we have to deal with. I try not to spin them and say, oh, they've got the FEMA camps ready for your deaths, and here they are. And that's not how it works. You know, there aren't a lot of straight-up FEMA camps where they're ready for people. No, in the case of disasters, they just take whatever's the biggest, take it over, and then convert it into a camp. So I don't know how far ahead these people are thinking if they want to destroy the population, but I do know that they do have a vision for where this population is going to go, and they're heavily invested in life expansion technology. Look at Ray Kurzweil. You know, Ray Kurzweil's been around a long time. He honestly believes that he's going to not only live forever, but he's going to have the ability to resurrect his dead father through his memories and his corpse, and that one day they're going to live long enough to hit the singularity where they're going to become basically beings of light that can take any form and travel the cosmos. And this guy is now one of the heads of Google, and they just hired him, and he's been with the company, I want to say, about 3 or 4 months. And Kurzweil is also one of these people that has basically discussed how it's inevitable. He is a genius. Like this, there's no doubt that this guy is a smart guy. If you know anything about music, the keyboards, the Kurzweil keyboards, that's him. The guy predicted iPads, iPhones, all this touchscreen technology 30 years before it happened. He's not an idiot. And Google recently acquired a company, I believe it's called it's either Calico or Alico. And they are devoted to not only life extension technology, but eradicating all disease and death in general. And I really do believe that that technology is possible, as for decades now, we have been testing regenerative technologies on mice and rats, and in some cases, extending their lives, innumerably, by 3 to 4 times. I think the normal lifespan of a rat is 2 to 3 years, and they've been able to manage these rats that basically don't age and don't die. So, that's something you don't hear about all the time. Well, rats have 94% of our DNA. So the science seems to be there, but whether or not you take it to that next level, that transhumanist level, and we can maintain our humanity is just a whole other question. I mean, Kurzweil talks about things like the worldwide mind, where essentially every human being on the planet is going to be interconnected, not through the internet, but kind of this web of consciousness. And there's a great PBS documentary by that name called The Worldwide Mind. I think it's all the way back now in 2004 or 2005. Seems ancient, but it's got all these luminaries and visionaries discussing this plan and how it's not science fiction. It's going to be fact at some point.
Well, Jason, you are very solution-oriented, as are we, and we talk about this on our show as well, because, they have a plan, but, we also kind of have an idea of what we want our future to be like, and you've mentioned before that you don't believe in sort of a utopia, and Virstyne and I, we kind of say the same thing on our show a lot. It's not necessarily anyone coming out trying to say, like, oh, we're going to make this utopic society. You kind of got to be a little leery about that, like we're a little leery about this whole zeitgeist thing. Yeah, the Venus project, because it was like, robots, I don't really know who's controlling those robots. But anyway, so what do you think we, in this movement, in our movement, the truth movement, whatever you want to call it, are striving for? And do you even think that a government is necessary for our society to thrive? I mean, certainly the one we have isn't working.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, let's talk about the government situation first. I, unfortunately, do not believe that we can live with anarchy. I know I've taken some flack from that. I had a long discussion with Adam Kokesh at the 2012 Bilderberg meeting about that. I've been accused of being a quote-unquote statist. But I really do believe that in order to have some kind of structure, the original structure based on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, to change that Constitution when necessary and not when it suits corporate interests, is a great idea, and probably the best form of government that any civilization has had, as it really was based on a bunch of farmers and colonials that, were they following rich white landowners? Sure they were. But they were also a ragtag army. It's not like they were part of the British Royal Army. It's not like they had joined some type of regime. They really wanted freedom. And I do believe we need a bare-bones government. I think that in order to have that, you need to take money utterly out of politics. This idea that lobbyists can throw cash at senators, congressmen, councilmen, mayors, governors is ludicrous. It needs to stop. We need to take the money out of politics. We have to give people equal time. We certainly have that ability to have debates for everyone, to have a system outside of this quote-unquote two-party system where everybody gets to debate one another and gets equal time in the media. And I think when we do that, and we actually hold these people accountable, in other words, we get rid of this idea of a presidential pardon for criminals. You look at people like Casper Weinberger and others who were pardoned by Bush during the Iran-Contra scandal. There's 14 people that were convicted of essentially trading arms for drugs in a black ops scandal that should have blew the lid off of our government, and it didn't. It was put into the background. The people that were found guilty later were let off the hook. Someone like Scooter Libby, that we know was guilty of releasing the names of Valerie Plame and her husband as CIA agents. What did he do? He didn't even serve 3 months. They didn't even wait to pardon him. They just commuted his sentence. So we need to get rid of that type of government. That definitely has to go. However, the idea of a Congress, of a Senate, of states' rights, I think that these are all great ideas. I think the problem is, again, we've allowed ourselves to just get entrenched in this money pit. And as far as, being solution-oriented, what do I want? Well, I want money out of politics. I want the electronic voting machines out. I want handheld votes. I mean, that's not a complete solution because we know there was ballot box stuffing back in the 50s and 60s and corruption that way, but it was certainly a better system. And I want equal rights for all human beings. Now, as far as, you kind of alluded to this zeitgeist model in the very beginning. And, I like the zeitgeist movies. I know that Peter Joseph doesn't care for me anymore, but I like that he's putting these films out. I think that they have a lot of merit, and I think that the technology that they present is not only very real, but could be very useful to society. In other words, I want the maglev trains. We could lift this country out of poverty today by starting a program similar to Eisenhower's program where he redid our entire interstate and highway system. It created jobs, it created purpose, it allowed for people to trade more avidly and travel more avidly. If we were to do the same thing with maglev trains and put these stations in major cities around the world and little substations in other important places and build a nationwide rail system, the likes of what China's kind of doing right now. Well, think about it if you could get to work from New York to Chicago in 30 minutes on a train ride. Wow, that would be pretty amazing. I could live in, upstate New York. I could do that, and I could go get a better job in Chicago, and I could come home every day, and it would allow the market to open wide up. Meanwhile, it would probably be a decade-plus process where we would definitely have jobs and an infrastructure. I like that technology.
Well, you know what, the thing about the zeitgeist movement that freaks me out is the fact that he's just like, the robots who do the work and nobody has to do anything. I'm just very suspicious of people that say that. It's like, have you read Twilight Zone to serve man?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's how, that whole concept where we're just giving everything and not giving.
I agree. I agree 1,000%. Those are some of my criticisms to that. I don't believe in a utopian society. I believe that even if you were able to get to that point, let's say that the robots were all good and they loved us so much and everybody lived in the same Tinker Toy house and had the same Tinker Toy car and the same resources and everything was the same. Well, guess what? Your neighbor's still going to want to bang your wife. We are human beings. People want what they cannot have. Unless somehow we are engineered to no longer be human beings, unfortunately, we're not perfect. We're far from perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not the best guy sometimes. I know this. I make mistakes. I do bad things. Everybody out there does. And unfortunately, you can't take the human element out without taking out human beings. So that part of the equation, I'm totally with you. I don't want the robots ruling over us. I want a constitutional republic that also is willing to move forward on technologies that can help humanity. Another great technology that's presented in these movies, other than the maglev trains, is these kind of greenhouses that are circular and built upwards. We could harvest so much more food for the planet if we use this. There would be no scarcity, but that's not the plan. If we start feeding everybody, guess what? The population explodes. And they love the fact that people in the third world are starving to death. They love the fact that people in the second world are struggling to, feed their families and put a roof over their head. And they love the fact that they're gutting first world nations like ours and bringing them down to second world nations. And that's really what Agenda 21 is about.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring up Agenda 21. We've had Dr. Rima on our show a couple of times who kind of blew the whistle on that whole Agenda 21 thing. And back to the zeitgeist thing, it's what I find kind of interesting is how they sort of make it out like it's a bad thing to work hard, whereas, you probably experience this when you make your films. I mean, it's a lot of hard work, but isn't it rewarding? It doesn't necessarily feel like it's, we've sort of been indoctrinated to think that all jobs suck, but they don't. It's just because we're working towards things that we don't really care about. If you're working, cleaning up after, we were talking about this earlier, if you're cleaning up, if you're a janitor and you're cleaning up a school of kids, it's kind of a sucky job. But if you're home and you're doing it for your own family, you feel good about it because it's your own hard work. So I thought that what they were trying to say was that a lot of human qualities aren't natural, that we're sort of taught those things. We're taught to act a certain way, and that's sort of our conditioning, rather than it's just actually human to want to work hard. It's human to keep busy and all those things. It's just most jobs out there suck.
Or the competition doesn't exist in humanity, and that's one of the things that they kind of put out there, is that competition is a bad thing, and I totally disagree with that. I fully believe that competition builds character. Hard work builds character, and like you said, it wasn't easy doing this movie. I basically, I had no script. I edited the entire thing. I did every single graphic. I had to level out I do all the covers for my DVDs. I got to build the DVD. It's tough, man. It's not easy, and I work 40 to 60 hours on top of it. So
it's funny, like with our show, we just kind of threw it together. We didn't know what we were doing, right? Like, I was living in a foreign country. We just threw something. We just made it happen, and it was a lot of hard work, but it's really rewarding in the end.
Yeah, we love it.
Exactly. Everybody likes to see the fruits of their labor, especially if they're positive and other people take note of them. And it does give you a sense of self-purpose. And I think that that's what's lacking. We've been kind of, I want to say, conditioned to think that doesn't matter, that what matters is the kind of clothes we wear and the people that we hang out with and the shows that we watch and the home that we live in. That's what matters, all these worthless status symbols, rather than the hard work we've done, the family structures that we've built, the homes that we've made, or the houses that we've made into homes. In other words, taking it beyond just that shell and really built something with it. And the family in general has just really been put out there as a negative force for some reason. And those are the types of things that I don't like. I think, once again, that human beings, although not perfect, can flourish, can thrive. There was a lot of things I liked about that Thrive documentary. I could have done without all the crop circles and the alien abductions. But it did have this positive message of, there are certain things on this planet that do thrive. Why is humanity not thriving right now? And I think that the reason that we're not thriving isn't because of competition. It's because of this predator class out there that literally has no care for humanity and is amoral to other people and their surroundings as long as it benefits their bottom line.
Intraspecific kleptoparasites. I learned that. No, the Richard Grove, he got it from somewhere else too, but that's the term he uses. I think it's perfect. Yeah.
I'm surprised you could repeat that though. I'm like, what? So, going back to talking about technology, you're talking about some of the interesting things that were brought up in the zeitgeist, and so what do you think of technology as it currently exists? Do you think we're evolving and we're getting better, or are we devolving in a sort of way?
Another really good question. The question about devolving, possibly, I'm a big fan of Idiocracy. It kind of shows where we could be, possibly sitting on our recliner/toilet bowl in front of 9 screens, and the big movie out there is basically a naked ass farting for 90 minutes. I suppose we could get there. But as far as technology being used to empower humanity, I got to tell you, I love the fact that I have a cell phone. I rock an S3 right now, but I'm a big tech dork. I'm jailbreaking and rooting, and I've got all these ridiculous devices that are somewhat over the top. But I love the fact that I can just be out and about just about anywhere as long as I have a cell phone signal now. I have an unlimited data cap, so I start talking to somebody, and they're like, "Come on, man, that's absolutely ridiculous." I actually had this happen. I would say about a month and a half ago. I was at some kind of an IT conference with my day job, and Bill Gates got brought up. And I had mentioned that Bill Gates was heavily invested in weather manipulation, and that he was not only a part of cloud whitening programs, but he also had a device which he claimed could knock out hurricanes and tropical storms for islands. And he actually wanted to charge these islands to do this. And the guy rolls his eyes at me, and he's like, "You're a nutball. That's absolutely ridiculous. Bill Gates is Microsoft. He doesn't." I'm like, Bill Gates doesn't even own Microsoft anymore. He has about 4% stake in the company. Most of the CEOs want him out. His real organization now is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and he will openly tell you that he's into weather manipulation. Oh, blah, blah, blah. While this is going on, my boss's wife is on her Galaxy Note or whatever, whips it out, types in the cloud whitening thing. She's like, "No, here it is. Here it is. This is the London Guardian. No, that's real." And then types in the nope, yep, that's real too. And the guy's face kind of goes blank for a moment, but he's in such utter shock he can't give up his position. Well, that's just crazy. I don't know what to think. And he walks away. But that's going to be a lot more effective than if I had just said it, that now he's got the proof in front of him. If he wants to go home and read those articles, he knows where to look. And that's how we have changed. You know, I want to say way back in 2007, might even been 2006, but before the Tea Party was really the Tea Party, I was going to Tea Party events for 9/11 Truth. And, man, I can't remember her name, Colleen something. I should remember it. But she had put together this thing where a bunch of people were dressed in colonial outfits. We were out by the San Francisco Harbor, out by the Golden Gate Bridge, and we had this giant 9/11 Commission report with holes in it. And they were throwing it into the river. You know, they had a way to pull it back in, but that was the big protest, and we were part of this thing. And one of those dancing guys, you know, the guy that dances like a robot on the street artist.
Yeah.
He had come over to me, and he's like, you know, man, what's all this about? And so without really saying anything, this is like a first-generation flip cell phone. Like, it actually let you do video. You get a 3GP video on it. So I had uploaded a video of World Trade Center 7 coming down. And I go, look, man, take a look at this. And he looks at it, and he goes, what? It's a building demolition. I'm like, exactly. And I'm like, that's the third tower that went down on 9/11. That's a 47-story skyscraper. I go, it would dominate any skyline around this part. I'm like, the biggest skyscraper you got around here is what, maybe 15, 20 stories max that we can see? And he's like, yeah. I go, imagine something 2 to 3 times that large imploding in on itself. And his face just went blank, and he kind of, you know, sucked it in for a little while, and then by the end of the protest, he grabbed me. He grabbed me by the shoulder. He said, man, thank you so much for dropping that knowledge on me. Thank you for showing me that video. I'm going to check out Loose Change, and, you know, thank you, man. I had no idea. And that was enough for him right there. He knew something was wrong as soon as he said that. And that's now, you know, 6 years ago. Now I can bring up an HD video. You know, I could, if I've got one of my tablets on me, if I've got an iPad or an Android tablet, you can watch it even larger, you know, right there. So in that respect, technology really is this double-edged sword where it can be used to either improve and help humanity, or it can be used to eviscerate humanity. And I like to use technology in order to empower humanity. That being said, you know, I've been an outspoken critic of things like Xbox's Kinect even before it was the Kinect. I did reports on it when it was Project Natal, and now that type of technology is becoming more and more prevalent, as you're seeing the same type of thing with the PlayStation. The new smart TVs are going to have built-in cameras. And folks, if the government has been caught track tracing and databasing every single thing that you have done on your computer, whether it's your web browsing, your email, your contacts, can you imagine what they're going to be doing with a camera that not only identifies you visually, but audibly, and can read your heart rate in some cases? Give me a break. This is a very, very dangerous thing. And I say to people, look, it's okay to have entertainment, but if you want to buy that Kinect and you want to have that in your living room with you and your family, maybe it's the smartest thing to do when you're done using it to unplug it altogether. Because as long as that thing is hooked up to a power source and an internet connection, there is nothing stopping anybody from hacking into that camera. In fact, you know, there was a story I published on my Twitter probably earlier this week in which Aaron's, which is already a place where I would say the lower middle class to poor are going. It's one of those rent-to-own places where you pay 2 to 3 times as much, but you pay it in weekly increments. They were housing their laptops with secret software that could not be detected or gotten rid of, which allowed them to go into detective mode, and they were spying on people through their webcams. And they did just get caught. They were found guilty, and they are going to have to pay out settlements. So if Aaron's is doing it, folks, don't put it past your government.
Yeah, please, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard Nick Petraeus, the former head of the CIA, he had said in an article or in an interview somewhere that even smart appliances like refrigerators and microwaves and those kinds of things would have cameras in them, and they could be able to detect what people were doing or when they went into the kitchen and so forth. That's like over the top. You do not need a camera in your refrigerator. Sorry.
But to watch scenes, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
I have a question, Jason. Do you give a label to the type of work that you do? Do you think it's important to have a name or label for, I guess like truther? Or do you think labeling is a form of disempowerment and putting people in a box who are hoping to find the truth?
I think it kind of depends. I was a quote-unquote truther before the term existed. And then when that term did start going around in the mainstream media, every time that I would get a mainstream media interview, I'd be like, yeah, it's so bad that you're labeling us as people who want the truth. Oh, what an derogatory comment. If that doesn't tell people that we live in some type of an Orwellian society when you can negatively connotate a group of people by calling them quote-unquote truthers, it's completely absurd. And as far as what I do, I try not to label it. A lot of people want to call it, the 9/11 truth movement or the patriot movement. The farthest that I will go is I'll say to people, look, I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in individualism. I believe in states' rights. And I believe in the truth no matter how ugly. I don't like to put it in any kind of a box. But when you're talking about just these crazy things on the surface, things that sound completely insane, I can see where people are hesitant. I was hesitant in the beginning in 2001, about 3 months after the attacks, and the tail end right about, I would say, Christmas. It might have even been around New Year's of the next year in 2002 that I really started looking into 9/11, and I was really disturbed, man. I got to tell you, a lot of people say, all this fear-mongering stuff. I was losing more sleep back then finding out this stuff than before I did anything about it. I actually started to get better rest when I would tell people. This is before I was doing documentary films or any of that. When I would go to the party and be the guy, at the beer pong table talking about the 2004 election being rigged between two cousins, two Skull and Bones members that went to Yale together. And people would be like, oh, you're crazy, Bermas. And then I would go grab the Daily Show had put out a book that year. And I go grab the Daily Show book, and inside the Daily Show book from that year was a fold-out poster of Skull versus Bones, Kerry versus Bush, and I just show them that little joke. And I'd say, it's even embedded in popular culture jokes. And you'd at least get people thinking. So to me, I don't like labeling it, but I just, I guess I just call myself an independent documentary filmmaker, man. I'm never going to have the MGMs of the world or the Lionsgates of the world backing me. I've tried to work with companies through Loose Change, including Mark Cuban's company and even a subdivision of Lionsgate, actually. But none of these people seem to have the guts to want to put this stuff out. And even somebody like Michael Moore, who I disagree on many topics vehemently, he hasn't put out too many documentaries lately, has he? He did Capitalism and Sicko after Fahrenheit 9/11, arguably the biggest documentary of all time. Well, that came out in, I want to say, either 03 or 04. So in the span of 8 or 9 years, he's done 2 other documentary films. Morgan Spurlock even, who I really liked, Super Size Me. I've seen his other works, Where in the World is Osama bin Laden? And the follow-up to that was actually better, The Greatest Movie Ever Sold. Well, there's yet another guy that in like a 7-8 year span has only been able to put out 3 documentaries himself. And arguably, he's one of the more popular documentary filmmakers out there. He's had TV shows. He's worked with big companies. But I feel like that information has gone from a political nature, what are you putting in your body, to something a little bit more fun in the idea of advertising through films and television, kind of as like this backdoor. I really did like The Greatest Movie Ever Sold. I wasn't a big fan of Where in the World is Osama bin Laden, but it shows you these things aren't that profitable. Everybody thinks, oh, you're in. I love it when people tell me I'm in it for the money. I'm like, I hear that all the time, and you're just trying to, I can't even tell you the letters that, the emails that my partner, Shepard Ambellis, got for Shade the Motion Picture when he set out an email bomb saying, hey, Shade is now available. You can get it on Vimeo for, I think it's $5.95 to rent or $8.95 to own, and it's, no scroll. It's in high definition. You get it in 1080p. You can plug it into your smart TV or burn it, put it on your Xbox, and watch it in high definition. Really easy to do. And people are like, you're part of the problem. If this really mattered, you would have given it away for free. And we do.
Yeah, like you're CIA. That's another one. They like to say somebody's CIA, right? They're like, oh,
CIA, Mossad. I've gotten that. I don't expose Israel enough, even though I have a 20-minute section in Fabled Enemies. detailing Israel's role in 9/11. You know, I had that probably a week before I had put out Shade. I had put out a couple of my other movies saying, hey, and you know, before you see my newest film, check out some of my older ones. And I remember on September 11th, actually, I put out my link to Fabled Enemies. And this guy just is like, well, why didn't you talk about this in Loose Change? And then it's just boom, boom,
Seems
boom.
like
boom,
you need to make his own movie.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I said to him, I said, hey, man, did you even click on that link? I go, because everything you just posted is in that link.
No.
And he's like, no, I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. And then, you know,
he said he was sorry?
He did apologize. He watched the movie, and he said, great film. I totally apologize.
Oh, wow.
But it's crazy to me that 5 years after I put out a film that probably millions of people have seen, I think the one YouTube link only has, like, I don't know, it's probably like 400,000. But this was back in the day of Google Video. You know, it was tough to even get your if you didn't have a director's account on YouTube, you didn't do it. And we were putting out Loose Change, Final Cut, Second Edition, and then I put Fabled Enemies out on Google Video, which no longer exists. And Google Video actually took off the view counts because Loose Change was dominating so much. There were times that we were 5 or 6 of the top 10 videos out there because people had put it into different languages. And there were times, you know, originally you could see how many views you had in a day, how many views it had, and they completely took that off after the integration with Google and the popularity of Loose Change. And by the time that Fabled Enemies came out, you couldn't even see the counter. So, you know, again, millions of people have seen the movie, but I'm an Israeli Mossad agent covering up for Israel, and it's so ridiculous.
Are you a ninja too?
I wish.
I heard you're a ninja. Could you clear that rumor up for us?
Yeah, that is a rumor.
I've noticed that people, you know, start to ask deep questions about society and the world going on around them because they start to experience like a paradigm shift. And in an interview that you had with Richard Grove, I heard you say that you lost a lot of friends in the initial response to questioning the official story of 9/11 and when you were awakening. So what was that like? Because I know, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was rough. I mean, honestly, you know, these are the people that you hang out with on a daily basis, that you share a beer with, that you go and you play some football with. You know, they're your friends. And you don't want your friends to somehow think that you're crazy or that you're anti-American. And, you know, it's funny you say that because I got a call from somebody that I probably hadn't heard from in about 2 years yesterday. And it had nothing to do with this, but in the initial response, I would say in 2004 or 2005, it was an alumni weekend for my fraternity, and he was up, and I had videos that I had basically, they eventually got into Loose Change, but they were separate, and they were just on my computer, and it was just a few quick videos that would kind of prove my point that there was something wrong with 9/11. And this gentleman, my friend Jay, and another one of my friends, Joe, they were mad at me right from, I don't even want to see this, Bermas, but okay, you're not going to shut up about it, let's watch this. So on one hand, I showed the evidence, and right away, Joe is just like, oh my God, you know, he's turning white, he's turning pale face, he realizes that I'm not a crazy person and that there's definitely something wrong here. On the other hand, Jay, who is this staunch Republican, his dad's a high-level Freemason as well, he's one of these really just like young gun conservative types. I never want to see this again. We are never going to talk about this again, Jason. This is unbelievable. Never talk to me about it. He's mad. He's beat red in the face, you know. It made it awkward for the rest of the weekend. Eventually he came around, you know. By the time that I had put it out Change and it got popular and he had taken a look at it and he wasn't angry with me anymore, he had come around to understand that I was trying to do the right thing and I wasn't trying to be negative. And, you know, he gave me a call yesterday and told me about his twin girls and his little boy and the whole nine, and we had a great conversation, and he was with another one of my friends that, you know, may not agree with my positions, but at least knows I have a valid point. And, you know, again, initially it was tough. It was tough having my stepfather think that I was insane and say things to my friends when they would come by that, you know, we just don't want to see him in his room with a jar full of ears. Like the craziest things, and I would look at him like, really, man? I mean, how long have you known me to know that, you know, I did well in school, you know, pretty smart guy. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I also do video editing. It's not like I'm, you know, this guy with a wall full of news articles on the wall, and I won't leave my room, and this is all I discuss. You know, I'm a regular dude. Like, I want to go out and have a social life. I want to be able to enjoy myself and not have to worry about this stuff all the time. But at the same time, I realize that the world around us heavily depends on, unfortunately, people like myself and millions of others opposing the establishment and opposing this system of tyranny. Because if we don't, then we're just going to fall into it quicker and quicker and quicker. And the idea that, people don't have individual power within themselves has been promoted. I can't tell you how much I hear, well, you really can't change anything. Well, I can't do anything about it. Well, that's just the way it is. Bullshit. It isn't just the way it is. There are plenty of people out there throughout history that have decided, no, this is not the way it should be, and I am going to raise my voice. Some have been successful. Some have not been successful. That's just the way the world works. But if you want success, you have to strive for it. Not everything you're going to do is going to be a breakout success. Not everything you do is going to change the world. But little by little by little, more and more people will come around to that perspective if it is indeed the truth. And through that, we can create this change.
And that's, to me, that's one of the most empowering things to me about finding the truth is that, when I was younger, I would ask about things like, why do wars happen? And people would say, oh, that's just the way it is. Like, it was just, or why do people get cancer? Oh, that's just the way it is. Now I understand that there's a reason by understanding the reason, you can do something about it. But a lot of people, they don't know that, so they're just kind of victims,
Yeah, people love to play the victim. Whether it's in, and I always liken it to, I'm not the elite, abused and tattered girlfriend that's just going to sit there and stand by her man no matter how many times he cheats on me or how many times he abuses me. And we see that constantly. Everybody's got that friend that has a douchebag boyfriend or girlfriend that just treats them like crap and lies to them, steals from them, cheats on them, and they just keep going back and back and back. Yeah. And I feel like the population is in that, abused girlfriend syndrome.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just not a part of it, man. I mean, I'll get rid of a chick in a minute.
Good for you. Good for you. I guess there's many guys that are, I guess people, you're right. I shouldn't just say guys, but, yeah, that do that stuff.
I see it on both ends, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I take that back. You're right. That hurts you have a jar full of ears and that you're a ninja. Maybe you need to handle that. So
that's the first thing.
Do you think that people can be forced awake? And is your family awake, so to speak?
Great question. We actually addressed that in the film. During the solution segment, Chris Geo of Truth Frequency Radio says, look, we can't use the same methods that they do. We can't force people to live free. We can't force people to not take vaccines. We can't even force the GMO companies to put labels on their food identifying it. So really, at some point, you have to take responsibility for yourself. And you just have to let people come to this information. And you know what? Some people are going to look at it. It's going to wake them up. Some people are going to take a look at it. It's not going to wake them up. Some people are going to look at it. It's going to take a while for them to come around to that information. But as long as we're putting that information out there, we're creating a positive response to all this negativity. And as far as my family being awake, they're pretty damn awake. They come to me, to be quite honest. Like if something big is happening in the world, all of a sudden it's not only just my family, but a lot of my friends. My text will blow up. What do you think about this? Or I'll get a phone call or a Facebook message. And my brother has come out with me on several occasions down to New York City on the anniversaries. And I remember telling my mom. My mom was really the first person that I told that I thought that 9/11 was something very different from what they said. And it was on a ride home from. Was I still in college? Yeah, I was still in college. So it was like I was 22 and I was going to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh online, and she had come up, and I was going to spend a weekend back home, and I told her, and she looked at me and she said, you know what, Jason, that makes a lot more sense than what's going on right now. And she agreed with me right out of the gates. My stepfather was tough to come around, but boy, he doesn't question me so much anymore. My sisters, the same exact thing. Although they're not very political, anytime there's something going on that they've got a question about, they ask me. And by the way, I don't have all the answers. I'm the first one to admit that I can get things wrong, too. Anybody can. We're human beings. We're imperfect beings. We're not going to be 100% right. I don't have all the solutions. But I'm going to damn well try to get the truth out there, and then from that truth derive the best solution, or at least what I think is the best solution, and put it out there. And hopefully we as a people can work towards more positive solutions for humanity.
A wonderful way to end the show, to wrap it up.
Yeah. It's been really great having you on, Jason. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And listening to you talk, we could continue on for another hour. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time.
I know. We tried at one time, and April, she did the editing. She had to pay for it poorly. Because we were like, this is a lot. We had Jan Irvin on, and we went kind of long. So.
Yeah.
No, I know who Jan is. Sure. We actually tried to get him for the film. He didn't want to do it.
Oh. Well, we can't speak to that.
Yeah.
But, it's been wonderful having you on the show. And so, but before you take off, we want to have you tell our audience once again about the film, where they can see it, where they can buy a copy of it, and all that good stuff.
All right, sounds good, guys. You can get the film over at shadethemotionpicture.com. You can simply go to YouTube if you don't want to pay for it. Type in Shade. It'll be the first thing that comes up. It's been out a little less than 2 weeks. I think it's got about 60,000 views on there. If you want to follow me and what I do, I am Jason Bermas at Twitter. That's BERMAS, and I am /Jason Bermas. Over on Facebook, I give away all my movies for free. Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, Loose Change Final Cut. You can find them all on YouTube, and I encourage people, please get a hard copy, make copies, hold screenings, and get this information out to as many people as possible.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason, for being on the show. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, Virstyne and I are going to close out the show. But we want to thank once again Jason Bermas for being on the show. It's been a pleasure, and you're certainly welcome back anytime.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, hold on, Jason.
What if you knew your very own government was implicated in spraying poisonous metals and toxins on the population?
I'm not surprised. I mean, let's look at the history. In the last 100 years, it's been proven and completely declassified information. They've been experimenting on people without their consent or will or knowledge. At the same time that they were spraying, my health started to get worse. After little research, yes, I had all the symptoms of barium intoxication. We have about 20 people, and about 90% came back with a very high levels of barium or aluminum.
It's government control of everything in our lives. Everything from the cereal you eat, everything to the air you breathe, how many times you flush your toilet. It's everything. And that's what they're trying to do, is micromanage how we live, who lives, where we live, what we eat.
It's so sad because, our children, nowadays, our children can see the blue sky. And
how do chemtrails relate to depopulation?
I guess the only way to know just what is being dispersed from these aerosols in our skies known as chemtrails,
no rain, sorry,
is to actually get your rainwater tested.
When I was young, I thought, skies are blue.
I mean, if we don't wake up and do something right now, our future is just totally screwed.
Chicken's feathers are coming out.
We have to do something about this.
If you control the weather, you control everything. You control every food supply and literally every political system.
Or we will all die.
Sorry, can't grow watermelons anymore.
Geoengineering gives man godlike power.
You're going to have scarcity.
Now, I've never chased godlike power.
Back in the day, we enjoy the rain and, we playing.
But it must be one hell of a rush.
It's raining. Don't go outside without umbrella. Yeah, it's a sad thing, you know what I'm saying?
Dark days ahead if we don't address these issues.
Yes, hello. I wanted to say that I love the conspiracy realist t-shirts that you can get only online. I that ship the truth is that come. New conspiracy with a seal. America is run by the CIA. Yes, the CIA. That's why you have to wear a conspiracy realist t-shirt all the time to let people know that you are not stupid. Go to ship.truthortiz.com. Ship.truthortiz.com. Ship. Like to go shipping when you buy things at the grocery store. Truthortiz.com.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. You can find us at truthertalk.com. So what's up, Virstyne?
What's up? Like us on Facebook, too.
Like us on Facebook, please, and follow us on Twitter. We're on everything, and you can also subscribe to us on YouTube. We're starting to get new shows up there. I just put up the interview we did with Max Egan a while ago.
Yeah.
I just put that up on I just put that one up on YouTube, and they let me put up the full hour length because before they were only letting us do 15-minute segments. But I guess I don't know how they make the rules, but they allowed us to do it. So hopefully they'll come up.
They'll let us do the rest.
Yeah, and
it's just two of us, so.
Right.
Anybody want to come volunteer and help us get our page together and translate our videos? I would like to translate her because I have Taiwanese friends and stuff too that I would like to share this information with, but their English is very poor, so I would like to translate eventually. I'm just throwing ideas out there. Get some of the YouTube videos translated to Chinese. So.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm going to be editing next week. And then we're going to be doing, putting out some stuff, and I forgot what I was going to say. But what did you think of our last guest?
He was whatever.
He was just okay. I mean, whatever.
We've had better. He was great. He was just really knowledgeable.
Fucking amazing, right?
He was, yeah.
Totally fucking amazing. I mean, just to let you know a little secret, Jason, if you're listening to this, I Skyped her during the thing and was like, fucking awesome, you know? Yeah. He was great. I was like thrilled to listen to everything he had to say. It was very concise, and he was fun. He was laid back, and he's certainly welcome on the show anytime. I really enjoy talking to the people that we interview, and every once in a while you get somebody who's just really full of information. And you can't even get through all your questions because they're so full of information. But then what they're saying is so interesting. You don't even mind. You want it to just keep going, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So he was one of those, and I really hope that people go and check out his work because if you haven't, you don't know who he is. He's a filmmaker, and he does really high quality projects. And he's I really enjoyed the Invisible Empire: A New World Order Defined. I remember. Watching that early on, just kind of trying to understand, you know, what is this thing called the New World Order? And it goes through it historically, and he's very cute. He's funny in the beginning. He kind of, you know, plays around with the NWO, like these wrestling guys, you know. And it's very cute. And then, but because he's got a sense of humor and he likes to kind of mix it up a little bit. And then he goes through basically the historical aspects of what the New World Order really is, and it's this one world government, which was described in George Orwell's book 1984, and it's essentially that, you know, to centralize and consolidate the power, which we already know is happening. That's what the oligarchy is. There's just these few people who are already trying to do that. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's what is it, Virstyne?
Is it what?
It's not a conspiracy theory.
It's a conspiracy realistic point of view. I don't know how to like theory. Wait, yeah.
Conspiracy reality is what I was going for. That's close.
Sorry.
Anyway, so sorry.
I put this grammar, but this is too much.
But anyway, it was a great interview. I really enjoyed talking to Jason, and listening to him talk. He was really fascinating, and yeah. So you know, it's always fun to have these people on, and you always want them back on again. But then there's so many people we want to get through to interview. It's difficult to have them on multiple times, but we try.
Yeah. I wish we could have gone longer, but that's with a lot of people though. We're kind of behind We're talkaholics, so we can talk forever. That's what we have to show.
And then I know, right? I mean, this talk started because Virstyne and I would spend good 4 or 5 hours talking about this stuff, and we thought, well, let's start doing it on air, on radio, and we can actually get people to listen to us, and then and maybe
share this. I think too, we were just talking about sharing the information.
Right. We wanted to do something. We just didn't know exactly what for quite a while, probably a couple of years before we figured it out. I don't know how long it was.
About a year, because I think we started when I was in my 2nd year in Taiwan.
Yeah.
About a year.
Yeah. So and then for about a year we kind of were toying with what we were going to do and we started doing things here and there. We were doing some essays and we were doing some YouTube videos, and then we thought we want to reach out to more. We want to be able to talk to people and bring them in because I like the idea of building this community with the people who are willing to see it and who have interesting things to say, and on multiple levels, be it whatever we talk about with 9/11 or vaccination or homeschooling or, education system, et cetera, et cetera. There's always ways, as Jason was bringing out, you can, just by joining the PTA and getting your school to provide cleaner food for the children is part of the processor.
Yeah.
As pointed out, you can try and get your local water municipality to stop using fluoride or some, these types of things can be done on a small scale. And so we really want to bring anybody who's willing to do that kind of stuff into our space so we can give them a platform to talk what they're doing. So I think we're going to go ahead and close out the show because we did go a little long with Jason, but it was worth it. It was really fun. And so thanks to him. Please check out his new film, Shade. You can get it for free on YouTube, or what was it? The website again? It was shadethemovie.com, I believe.
Yeah. I think it's shadethemotionpicture.com.
shadethemotionpicture.com, and you can get the high-definition DVD, or you can watch it for free on YouTube. And if you're a cheapskate, no, I'm just kidding. No, I want to help guys support him.
They're putting a lot of their time and energy and love into making a full feature film to try and educate people and trying to raise the consciousness of the planet. So it's a big cause.
Yeah, and we all do this with our love and our sweat and our blood and our tears. So we thank Jason Bermas for being on the show today. It was really fantastic, and he's awesome. It was just a great interview. I'm kind of floored by it. So thanks a lot, Jason, and as always, peace, truth, and love.
Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you.